Cool. Thank you so much. And I think that connects to what Vivek also said. The business of the business is to make business. Some of us we lose track that we have to make money, and then go for all those lofty goals, which are sometimes great, but not really in a investor context, so to say. Cool. So as I said, I will try to use the metaphor of the marriage and the Indian scenario of how you find a bride for yourself or a groom for yourself to take you across today. For the next 90 minutes, I will try to share with you some thoughts on the whole process of investment. Like the people before me said, it's not necessary that you only have to raise money. It could also be to find a strategic business partner who can take you forward. For example, we have Ramya from Bailey. So Bailey wants to expand to Germany. She could have David as an investor, and David can actually open up a lot of things because it's his money involved now, and he will be forced to help you get the market kind of thing. My name is Pradeep Yuvraj. I run a company called Presentive. We are a pure play presentation design agency. Day in and day out, I meet startups like you, and we help them make their pitch decks, which they carry to investors. I call myself storyteller because I believe at the end of the day, all of us need to really tell stories. It's those stories that will only help you move forward in every aspect of your business. There are three things that we'll try to do today. One, we will try to dissect the structure of a winning pitch deck with an asterisk. I forgot to put the asterisk there. Conditions apply. So don't come back to me tomorrow and then say that, okay, I did whatever you said and it doesn't look like winning. There are a lot of things that need to go together, and we will try to see if we can understand some of those. The second one, we will talk about what investors are really looking at. You already heard two of them in this call, and some of that may have been very new to you. Contrary to what we popularly believe, there are different other things that they look at. And the third one, we will talk about do's and don'ts of presentation and some very basic design skills that we as entrepreneurs need to know. I am not a trained designer, but I run a design company. Whatever I've learned, the basic things that are required for you and me is what we will talk about. How many of you here are engineers? Yeah, I'm assuming almost 90% of us, right? So my friend Komala was sharing a joke from MasterChef, which said that for Asians, either we are doctors, engineers, or we are beaten up, right? So that's the three categories that we all fall under. So it's good. So when I speak about design, I always remember my engineering and engineering graphics as my subject, a subject that I still can't comprehend. And I realized that probably some of the basic principles were taught to me, I might have been better in life. So that's what we will try to do today. What are the concepts that I'm talking about to you about? Where are these coming from? They come from my experiences of having worked with almost 500 plus startups who have used their decks, the decks that we have created for them to go to their investors. So some of them got funded, some of them did not get funded, some of them pivoted, some of them shut their business down. So I've been having conversations for the last 10 years with these people, these startups. And from them, I have tried to filter down some of the key facts that they have come back to me and told that this is what happened when we try to pitch to the investor. The second part is I've had a conversation with 45 different investors across the globe on a one-on-one basis to understand what is it that those individuals look at. Although it cannot be a generalization, but what I've tried to do is again filter that down so that you can understand the perspective of 45 different investors. And of course, the design concepts and the business concepts are from my work experience, having worked for three of the largest companies in the world, ExxonMobil, Shell, and Total. So there's a corporate employee inside me as well. And of course, from this company that I am currently running for the last 10 years, which is Presentive. So as is always, I start off with a bit of music that can help us take a pause. So what I'm going to do is to play some audio for you now. And when I play the audio, I want you to close your eyes, forget everything, forget your work, forget your deadlines, forget your targets, forget the delivery that you had to give to the customer. Just close your eyes and stay here with me. Take a deep breath and just relax for the next 1 minute. Someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear the music. Close your eyes, forget everything. Don't bother COVID, expat, growing in Europe. Don't bother about the next deadline, the targets, what's coming, the chips. Forget everything. Just relax, take a deep breath, and enjoy the moment.
அக்னி குஞ்சொன்று கண்டேன், அக்னி குஞ்சொன்று கண்டேன், அங்கொரு காட்டிலோர் அதை அங்கொரு காட்டிலோர் பொந்திடை வைத்தேன். அக்னி குஞ்சொன்று கண்டேன், அதை அங்கொரு காட்டிலோர் பொந்திடை வைத்தேன். வெந்து தணிந்தது காடு, வெந்து தணிந்தது காடு, தழல் வீரத்தில் குன்றென்றும் மூப்பென்றும் உண்டோ.
Please open your eyes. I always do this in before all my workshops for multiple reasons. One is to tell ourselves how fast a life we need. It was 1.5 minutes, and some of you were struggling to keep your eyes closed without thoughts crossing you around. So the idea of today's workshop is to help you as a startup take a pause. Many of you are constantly running and trying to get your customers, to get your business moving, to get your investments. Today, for the next 90 minutes, I want us to take a pause, step back, and look at it from a very different perspective, multiple perspectives, and see if some of these thought processes can be implemented in your startup. That's the whole idea. Ramesh, just give me a thumbs up if you can see my slide, the Agni Kunjan content thing, right? It's basically a Mahakavi Bhardiyar poem which says that I took an ember of fire or of a small spark and put it in the forest, and the next day the forest was burned down to ashes. That is the power of an idea. That is the power of a small ember, and that's what each of you is trying to do to change the world. Of course, now this word change the world has become so cliched. If you have seen the series Silicon Valley, you will know how funny it is when someone uses the word I'm trying to change the world. But yes, all of us are trying to change the world in some small way, and that's what Bhardiyar said, that's the power of the idea. So catch on to the idea and make the world a better place. A disclaimer: everything that I say today is 100% correct. Everything that I say today is 100% wrong. So please don't take me literally. These are different perspectives from different people. Put it into your particular startup, put it into your lifestyle, and see if it fits in. If it fits in, great. If it doesn't fit in, you don't have to follow what I'm trying to tell you. Second, I am not an investor. I don't have any investments in any of the companies that are here. So there is no conflict of interest from my side as well. So just before we start off the actual investment part, I wanted to set the context by giving, like every book has a preface, I wanted to give you a context which is basically to tell you the importance of storytelling, and that each of you need to understand that although you are maybe a technology company, although you are maybe a company that depends on engineering, the world is transforming into a world that belongs to the conceptual age. And what does the conceptual age mean is, I have taken the structure of a book which is A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink, which talks about how the world of the future is going to be a world which is going to be ruled, if that's the right word, by teachers, storytellers, people who are right brain thinkers. So for you, each of you as a CEO or the founder of your startup, how can you evolve in this conceptual world? There are 6 frameworks that Daniel Pink talks about. If you want to know more, you can buy the book. I'll just take 5 minutes to take you through those 6 different attributes that Daniel Pink talks about as being important for the CEO of the future. Number 1, design. So what is design? Design is, in a way, if you look at it, it is aesthetics. Design, in a way, if you look at it, is functionality. How will my customer use my product? If I'm building a website, or if I'm building a software, how will the user see things on the monitor? Will it be on the left side, right side? What kind of colors I want to use? If I'm someone who's in the food industry, what kind of packaging do I want to use? These are all different attributes or different aspects that comes as design. Many a times, most startups think about design in the end part as an end outcome of their business. What Daniel Pink says is, whenever you're doing anything, start off with design as the first part. It could even be the experience design. For example, what is the difference between drinking a tea at your local tapri from the chai wala Anna and paying 300 rupees for the same thing in a barista or in a higher end restaurant. It's the difference. The difference is the experience. So experience is also a design aspect that you and I need to look at as a startup. Like the common thing that I see where design is ignored is when startups try to do jugaad and create a prototype out of pipes and tubes and drums and all those things that they get hand. It's great when you start off doing that as an individual, but when you are trying to make it as a customer facing product, you need to look at design as the most key fact and work on it. Number two, Sean, you're disturbing me. Second attribute that Daniel Pink talks about is the importance of storytelling or importance of telling. You can see on the screen a crow and a pot. Tell me, what is this? Put it on chat. Let me put my chat on so I know what you guys are typing. Yeah. What is this? What is this? The photograph that's there on my slide. The tale of the thirsty crow. I'm sure most of you, I think the average age is 20, 21. You would have seen this, including my age. If my age was not counted, the average may be a little lesser. But you heard it probably 15 years ago. How did you remember it till now? What was the idea that there was less water, so the crow put rocks into it and the water came up, right? So they wanted to teach us about hard work. They wanted to teach us about smart work, everything. So as a child of 5 years, if your grandmother had told that, listen, Komala, you need to do hard work, you need to do smart work, you would be like blinking because it's an abstract concept. What do stories do? They take abstract concepts and make them human. They make them tangible so that your mind can understand that. And that's how stories are important for you as an entrepreneur, is to take abstract concepts, because the investor sitting in front of you is also a human being. It's not a robot that can understand. Just 1 second. Shan, you're disturbing me, Shan. Just hold a second. I'm sorry. Shan. Wife trouble. Yeah, sorry for that. Cool. So taking abstract concepts and converting them into stories will help you reach your message to the other person. I have had experiences with startups who have come back and told me, I don't understand why these investors are not able to understand what I'm telling you. My technology is so easy, so clear. It is so intuitive, and they still can't seem to understand. Why? Because these startups, they missed giving this human element to the investor, and the investors were clueless, because the investor may not understand what your technology is. He or she may not understand what business domain you are in. So bring in the human element by bringing in the story. So to summarize that, storytelling is not what we do, but storytelling is who we are. Who are we? What are we trying to do with this world? If you can articulate that in the form of stories to investors, I think you have done 90% of the job that's needed. The third part that Daniel Pink talks about is the importance of symphony. Okay, I will give you two scenarios. Scenario number one, I show you this big picture, I cut it into small puzzles, and then give it to you to solve the puzzle. Scenario number two, I just give you the broken pieces and ask you to assemble the puzzle. In which scenario, A or B, will you be able to do it faster? Put it on the chat. You can unmute yourself as well. I show you the big picture, cut it into pieces and give it to you, or I just give you the pieces and ask you to assemble it. Scenario A or B, which one will be faster? A. Abhishek says A. Obviously A. Okay. I don't know what's obvious about that, Komala. Anyway, so the idea is, what Daniel Pink says is that when you talk to people, talk from the big picture perspective first. Talk from a 30,000 feet view first. Don't go into your team, don't go into your technology, don't go into your business model. That's not needed. On a 30,000 feet view, try to tell them what is it that's going to happen today at the end of the 15 minutes or the 10 minutes that you and I are going to speak. When you give people the big picture, then it's easier for them to decipher the smaller pieces when you talk about it. If you start off from the smaller pieces, then it's very difficult for them to see what's at the end, and they're constantly thinking what is going to come at the end, and you actually lost them in the first 2 or 3 minutes. So start off with the really big picture as to what your startup can do, and then go into the nitty-gritties of the whole thing, which we will cover later on in this workshop as well, as to how you do that. Point number 4 is empathy, which is again from the example that I told you, this common desperation that among startups that come back to me and say, I don't bloody know why these guys can't understand me. It's because you haven't taken the effort to understand them. Maybe the investor is not an engineer. He doesn't understand the engineering terms that you're talking about. Maybe the investor is not from an agriculture background. Maybe he has not seen Indian rural farmers using a drum on the back to spray fertilizers. I think one of you, Ramesh, if I'm not wrong, or one of you is doing a business where you're converting those into usable things, right? So you think that he understands when you tell that a farmer is struggling when he has to carry fertilizer, but he has never seen it because in his geography, it doesn't exist. So you have to empathize with him or her, put yourself in their shoes, give them the context, and then talk to them about what you're trying to do. Otherwise, you assume that they know and they absolutely do not know, and you have lost them. Number 5, Daniel Pink talks about is the importance of play, the importance of humor. Many people ask me whether in an investor meet, I need to be very formal, very serious. At the end of the day, you and I are human beings. If there's a small element of play, there's a small element of humor in it, it will always be great. Just a simple example, because Komala is my guinea pig today. I take Komala, I beat her left, right, and blue. I bash her up. Okay, I put her in a room without water for 10 days and then say, Komala, come back to me with a business idea. Scenario A. Scenario B, I give Komala a ticket to Dubai with $10,000 in cash and say, go have fun, come back and give me a business idea. In which scenario do you think Komala will perform better? Scenario A, obviously Komala will say. Scenario B, right? Komala wants that $10,000. Don't hold me to it. It's not on record. The point is, we all tend to perform better when we are in a playful mode, when we are relaxed. And it applies equally for an investor meet as well. If there's a small humorous element that you can put in when you are going to meet the investors, try to use that element. Does not mean that you carry a joke book and go and tell them jokes, but try to bring in some humor or a play element into the whole thing. And Daniel Pink says that it can actually do wonders for you in your business. And finally, what Daniel Pink says is whatever you do has to make meaning to the other person. Try to bring in meaning to each aspect of whatever you're trying to say or trying to do with the other person. This, I will keep it on hold to explain what it really means when we say meaning. In around 15-20 minutes, I'll come to a slide where you will understand this in a little more detail. Perfect. So we will get now into the first part. I've divided my workshop into 3 parts. One part is a templated part based on lots of permutations and combinations. It's a rough structure for you to, as a startup, to find a structure of how you can present. Like I said, please don't take it 100% as correct, 100% as wrong. You need to juggle certain things depending upon how your startup is positioned. Maybe slide number 3 can be in slide number 9, slide number 9 can be in slide number 1. Those things can move. But overall, this is a proven structure that most startups and most investors are comfortable with. So it's easier for you when you go with the same structure so that they are not able to, they don't have to spend time trying to understand what you're saying because they already have a template in their mind, right? For those of you who like to take notes, don't copy anything from my slides. I will share these slides with you. You don't have to note down anything from the slides. But if there's something else that you would like to take notes from, please go ahead and be my guest. So before I get into the structure of a deck, I want to ask, what is the purpose of a pitch deck, especially the first pitch deck that you take and carry to an investor? The first meeting that you have with an investor, they ask you to present to them, right? And for a major part of today's session, I will be talking about pitch decks in the context of presenting them to someone. There's something else called as pitch books, which is what you mail to investors or to mail to advisors when they ask you for an emailing. The difference is the pitch deck is predominantly visual. The pitch book is predominantly content driven. So we will not spend too much on the pitch book, but I will give you in the end a little insight into what a pitch book is. But right now I want you to type in your chat box, or if you want to unmute, I'm perfectly fine with unmuting as well. What is the single purpose of a pitch? The first pitch that you do to an investor. What should be the outcome? And trust me, this probably is the $1 million question. If you get this right, you have got most of it right. What is the purpose, single most important purpose? To make them understand what you're doing. Very good. Share an idea, okay. To make the investor understand about the business, okay. These are all part of the process. But what is the real outcome? What should happen after you do that? To build curiosity to sit with you for another 30 minutes. Perfect. So it's to call you for a date, right? So the single most important purpose of the first investment pitch is not to get you investments. It's not to make them understand what you're doing. It's just to create a curiosity in their mind and say, wow, I want to talk to you in detail. Can you come to my office? Let's have a detailed discussion. It's to open a door, period. Nothing else. And the reason I told you this is important is because a lot of startups, they think that the first pitch deck is itself something that will make people write checks or give you investments. No, that doesn't happen. You have to go with a clear idea saying that this 10 minutes is going to do only one thing for me. And that one thing is to open a door for me to spend half an hour or 45 minutes or 1 hour with the investor and their team to then discuss about how this business can make value to them. Please understand, the investor is there as a human being who is asking one simple question, Isme mera kya hai? What is in it for me? Right? No one is selfless there. Oh, wow, I like Ramesh from Way to Grow. Let me give 10 minutes of my life to him. No, he is there because he wants to see what you can do for him and for his life. So if you can answer that one single question, that's done. You don't have to go. So which will, if you get this context right, concept right, it will automatically tell you what to put in the slides and what not to put in the slides. That's the reason why I said this is kind of the $1 million. That it's only and only to open up a door to excite the other person to say, wow, I want to talk to you because I think I would like to be your partner. Period. Nothing else, right? I like this slide. It's a slide I made around 7 or 8 years ago. Very wonderful slide with a lot of good content about the Taj Mahal. And I really drew a nice photograph of the Taj Mahal using my mouse on MS Paint. This is one of my most favorite slides with the colors that I use, very brilliant colors. My question to you is, after looking at this slide, will you go to see the Taj Mahal? Abhishek is shaking his head. So, no. Abhishek, you created a confusion in my life for 2 days. I'll tell you what it is. Okay, later on. I'll tell you later on what it is. Yeah. You sent a mail with the question, right? What is the importance of the investor deck or something like that, right? Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you what the story is in a few minutes later. Okay. Good. Okay. Yeah. So how many of you will go to see the Taj Mahal after seeing the slide? Not if you're giving us a tour. Komala is hell bent on taking revenge today from me, right? Yeah, if I make you the guinea pig, you're the guinea pig as well. So most of us would answer no. We would not, oops, the power has gone. Just hold a second. I try to be fair and lovely. Now it's a little black and lovely. Sorry for the power outage. We are having heavy rains in Coimbatore today. Cool. So most of you would not go to see the Taj Mahal. Now, would you go to see the Taj Mahal? If I tell you this is how the Taj looks?
Probably.
Yeah? Probably yes, right? Moral of the story, presentation matters. You can be the 7th wonder of the world, but if you're not presented in the right way, no one will bother about you. Which is the same thing that holds true for you as an entrepreneur. Your idea may be the next Jeff Bezos, your idea may be the next Amazon, but if you don't present it in the right way, your idea will just fizzle out, right? The importance of presentation cannot be reinforced again and again. You yourself prove to your mind that presentation matters, right? So that is what we are trying to do today, is to see how each of you can put your presentation, put your ideas and thoughts in a way that it will have the maximum impact on the investors or any other audience. Although predominantly we will focus on investors, but it can be for a customer, it can be for any other audience as well. So what are the key components of a pitch deck? We will take 10 minutes to give you a templated structure, and then you can add meat to it, and I'll try to give you some examples as well. So the first slide, which sometimes we also call as the holding slide, is an introduction or a value proposition. So this slide is solving two purposes. One, it distills down your idea into a couple of lines so that anyone can understand it easily as to what you're trying to do, the big picture, as I said earlier. It also can be the holding slide. So because when you are trying to set up your presentation, you're getting ready, you're drinking a little warm water, and there's something on the screen, right? When this something is on the screen, the investor or the audience has read it, and now they are clear what they can expect from the next 10 minutes of your presentation. So basically the value proposition is nothing but what is the big deal that your startup or your product is doing to make the world a better place, right? How do you do this? You compress your value proposition into 1 or 2 lines. Let's say, for example, the easiest way is to use a metaphor of someone else who's already existing. Let's say I am a company that is aggregating marriage halls, right? So that people can go online and book a marriage hall without actually having to go to the marriage halls, right? So I can use the metaphor saying that we are the red bus of marriage halls. So now what's happening in the investor's mind? Red bus, everyone knows it's an aggregator. They don't have their own buses. They don't have their infrastructure. What they do is they bring buses to one single platform from where you can book. So by using these kind of ready-made metaphors, we are the Ola of marriage halls probably, right? So you are using a metaphor that easily gives the investor or the audience something to relate to it without having to put their mind into understanding what are you trying to say. Let's say there are some times when a simple single line can do wonders, right? For example, let's say you're a startup that's manufacturing solar panels so that agricultural motors or pump sets can run without the dependency on the power supply from the government, right? You can say that we are into the power segment trying to give renewable energy sources so that farms can be sustainably run and pumps can be driven. Or you can just say solar panels to make pumps independent of power supply, period. So now in one simple, clear line, the person sitting in front of you understands that you are doing something relating to pumps and electricity, you're doing something related to agriculture, and he or she is now in the frame of mind to take your inputs further. So either try to keep it as simple as possible in a 1.5 line, what we call as an elevator pitch, or try to give a metaphor or an equivalent so that they are able to understand what you're trying to do. Let's do an example so that you can understand this better. Abhishek, what are you doing? What's your business?
It's called Skyfresh Farms, sir. We actually introduce technology which is used like I'll just give an example, sir. We introduce foreign technology and different types of seeds to Indian farmers to make it so that they can design their farms in such a way that it helps and facilitates in it helps to make farm to table businesses better, sir. I don't know.
Right. So perfect, Abhishek. This is what is the key challenge, right? Because you have it in your mind, but maybe you're not able to articulate it to the person in front of you, and that's where the empathy part comes in. Is if you can't yourself tell it, how do you think he or she can understand? Okay, don't worry, Abhishek. We are all in the same boat. We have all been through the same boat, and over the next 2 months, 3 months, we will try to fine tune that and bring it up. So what I would say, Abhishek, is you are basically into seed coating, if that's what I understood rightly, right?
No, sir. Actually, we are just introducing technology to Indian farmers.
Okay. So I think a very simple and easy way. I'm just thinking out loud. I haven't given it thought. But what you can say is enabling Indian farmers to grow using the latest global technology, right? Yeah. Could be one way of putting it. That's all. So now automatically the person has understood, because see, you use some words like you said seed coating and all those things, and that's why you got me confused thinking that you are a company that's into seed coating. So if you can phrase something like this, then it's very easy for the other person to understand what you're trying to say. Cost-effective bioreactor to make bioproduction simpler and faster, says my friend Vijaya from Cardle Industry. Right, Vijaya, I don't know what a bioproduction is. I don't know what a bioreactor is. So I am not able to understand what you are trying to say. You understand that? So what I would do, Vijaya, is try to make it a little more easier for me as a person who's, let's say, I'm an electronics engineer. I don't understand head or tail of agriculture. So make me understand by using simpler words. We will do it as a one-on-one activity sometime later. But what I wanted all of you to understand is you have to be able to tell what you do as a business in 1 or 2 lines. And that's the first slide that you are putting there. Slide number 2. Slide number 2 is defining what is the problem, right? Or what's the world missing without your startup. So it's not always that we are all trying to solve a problem. Some of us are trying to make something which is better. But in essence, if you compile everything, it all is a problem that you're trying to do. So the problem statement is exactly what is it that probably motivated you to start the company. Let's say, for example, I designed PowerPoints. The problem that I faced is I saw a lot of my friends struggling to make great presentations. They had great ideas, but they were not able to make great presentations. They wanted to make great presentations, but they could not because they did not have the time. The last minute before the customer meet, 2 hours before that, they will sit in the airport and they will make presentations. So if I were to ask you what my value proposition as a company is, my value proposition is not designing. My value proposition is I am giving startup founders the benefit of time, because now they can use those 2 hours to think of what they can talk to the customer while my team is designing the customer. So that is what I wanted to understand is the value proposition. It's not the end product. What is the benefit that my customer is getting out of it? The benefit my customer in my business is getting is that he or she doesn't now need to spend 12 valuable hours designing a PowerPoint, because they can outsource it to Presentim and they can spend those 12 hours trying to understand what they can speak. So find out what is that value proposition that you are giving. Many of us, we get diluted into the actual features of the product. That's not the value. The benefit that they derive out of a product is the value proposition. So you define what is the problem. Let's say, for example, Ramya, what is it that you're trying to do, Ramya? What problem are you trying to solve?
We are enriching consumers' healthfulness by enabling Indian farmers. We specialize in Indian spices. We are looking at bringing back pride in the lives of farmers, small landholding and marginalized farmers.
Okay. So let's say the problem that you're trying to solve is that you are reducing the hurdles between the farmer and the end user, and ensuring that the Indian farmer benefits rather than the American or the Israeli or whatever farmer kind of a thing, right? So again, because I'm thinking aloud and I'm thinking on the go, maybe the statement that you need to you would probably put is saying that many Indian farmers, especially the spice farmers, are growing lots of great spices. But because it's a domain that's not really looked up in detail, like let's say how they would look at rice or how they would look at tomatoes or vegetables, because those are the the regular day-to-day things. No one thinks really of spices much more than as a gift or as a part of the kitchen. So you are focusing on spice growers to ensure that they get a better pricing for their business. Again, I'm thinking on the go. It may not be the perfect thing. That's how you define your problem statement. What is it that's missing, or what is it that your end user is getting trouble? Let's say, for example, like I said in the presentation design, the problem is that they don't have the time to build the presentation, and I'm trying to solve that. The second part that comes in the slide is how many people have the problem, right? Again, this particular slide can probably come here. It can come later on also. What you are trying to do is, Ramya, let's say, for example, I have a customer, let's say again, Ramya, for example, okay, that there are, Ramya says that people who are growing spices are not getting good prices. Perfect. Good problem. But I am not able to get a context as to the magnitude of the problem. So now Ramya says that over 1 million farmers in India are suffering from the same problem. Now what happens? Oh my God, really? Right? Because now as an investor, what's happening in my mind? Problem. And 1 million people are facing problem. If each of those 1 million gives me 100 rupees every day, think of the revenues I'll make. Now, without you having to tell the investor about the market size, he is calculating it in reverse. He is calculating the revenues in reverse. So you define the problem, and then you say it's not just Ramya and Ramesh and Harsha and Radha who have the problem. If there are 1 million people or 2 million people or 10,000 people or 5,000 people, I don't know what the numbers are, they have that problem. Again, like I said, in some businesses, this slide can be here. Some businesses, it can be moving forward. So now what has happened? There's a problem. The investor is saying, oh my God, really? Are so many farmers struggling without having a good market for their pepper? And you have said the context also with the number. What do you do? Now you tell them the Eureka movement, which is nothing but your solution. That's sir, don't worry. This was the problem till my company, Pro Rurals, came in. Now that Pro Rurals has come in, don't worry, this problem is solved. Right? So this is the aha moment, the Eureka moment, that wow, there is a problem. Oh my God. So many people have the problem, bigger, oh my God. And then Dr. Somana says, don't worry, Pro Rurals here. Oh, wow. Now what's happened? There's a logical progression built in the mind of the audience. problem, big magnitude problem, so much dollars, so much money blinking in his eyes. And how can I make money? There's a solution already. Let me connect with Dr. Somana, become his partner, and make money. Simple. There's a selfish person sitting in front of you. The selfish person does not want to solve the problem of the farmer. That is Ramya's problem. The selfish person wants to make money out of that problem, and that's where Ramya's or Dr. Somana's or Srivasu's solution is going to help him make money. Because he knows he cannot do that business, but he or she can ride on you and make money out of that business. You see, it's pure human psychology of building a pitch deck. So slide number 1, value proposition. Slide number 2, problem. Slide number 3, how many people have the problem? Slide number 4, what is the solution? Then you give a little context as to what your product or business is doing, right? You don't go detailed into it. You don't go into the nitty-gritties. Broadly, you say that I source, let's say, Kushal and Komala from Shape Engineering, because I know their business. So what they're trying to do is to bring companies that are training college students, companies that are giving offline, online courses, and bringing all of them into one single platform. So this is what our product does. The problem is that there are hundreds and millions of engineers coming out of India. All of them are engineers. They have, or rather, all of them have an engineering degree. They are not an engineer. It's a big statement, right? They have an engineering degree. They're not an engineer because they're not trained the right way that companies expect them to be, which makes them unemployable. How many people are there? Every year from Coimbatore alone, 1.96 lakh students graduate as an engineer without having the capability to be actually an engineer. Now multiply this with the number of colleges in India, and now as an investor, my cash bell is ringing. Now Komala comes and says, "Yay, I have the solution, and this is the solution." How does the solution work? That is what is the service or the product that you're trying to do. Again, it should be in maximum of 45 seconds to 50 seconds. Don't go detail into the product, because that's not what he's bothered about. He's bothered about how he or she will make money. Now, which I think Vijay Komagan, I'll mute you. There's some noise on your side. Yeah. Now comes to the real part, right? Where is the money? Oh, great. This is a problem. Oh, you're doing a great thing. You're doing helping Indian economy, helping Indian farmers. Great. But where can I see the money? Which is basically where you articulate how your business will make money. So, for example, Ramya, will you charge a commission from the farmer, or will you do a markup and retail the product in the market? Or will you tie up with institutions like, let's say, Big Bazaar and make your money out of that? What are the different streams from which your business will make money? So that now the investor understands, okay, there's a problem. There are so many people who have the problem. This could be the solution. So there's a solution. Now, if I can go on a subscription model, I can go on a per product model, I can go on a retainer model. So the investor is able to understand how the cash will flow in. Again, don't go into too much details. Just give them broad ideas as to where you will get your money from. Again, like for example, Abhishek said, will you charge money from the principals who are bringing in those agriculture implements? Or will you go to the governments of each of those states and say that, okay, you fund this and I will get latest equipment for the farmers? You don't know, right? So each of you can have a different model. This is where you talk about your business model in a very minimalistic kind of way. Then comes traction. So traction is nothing but proof of the pudding, right? So let's say Srivasu from Fat Cat. What do you do? Srivasu? Bunking class, huh? Okay. Glonix Electronics, Agalya, what do you do? This is the scariest moment for a teacher or a workshop facilitator. When you talk calling out names and there's no answer. Oh my God, are they there? Okay, let's say Prajwal from Yain. You can unmute yourself. Not unmuting. No one. Okay, let's go to Yogesh. Yogesh Gawande from Neo Innovative Solutions.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Yogesh. So what do you do, Yogesh?
Sir, we are basically from Aurangabad, Maharashtra.
Okay, मराठीमध्ये सांगा म्हणजे.
सर आम्ही एक व्हील वेस्ट स्प्रेअर बनवलाय. शेतकरी काय करतात तर पाठीवर एक 16 लिटरचा किंवा 18 लिटरचा टँक घेऊन स्प्रे करतात पूर्ण शेतभर. तर त्याला सोल्युशन म्हणून मी एक व्हील बेस्ड स्प्रेअर बनवलाय. त्याच्यामध्ये 4 नोझल मध्ये म्हणजे 4 नोझलने तुम्ही स्प्रे करू शकता.
आता किती कस्टमर आहेत तुमच्या?
सर जवळपास 2,500 पेक्षा जास्त स्प्रे मशीन्स मी विकल्यात. 18 राज्यात माझं मशीन जातं.
Super. Thank you, Yogesh. So what Yogesh said is that, I'm sorry, Ramesh, I confused you with Yogesh. So Yogesh is the gentleman who's doing the sprayer, instead of a farmer carrying the sprayer on the shoulders, he's trying to spray it using a machine. Now, I understand the problem, okay? That there's so much pain. But how can I really believe Yogesh? When Yogesh tells me that, sir, there are 2,500 farmers in 18 different states who are using my machine, then I know this guy is onto something. Right? Having a great idea, having a great solution is great, but are people really paying money for it? That is what is the traction slide, which is the slide that proves to the investor that you really mean business. So for those of you who are already in existence, who are already having customers, this is a slide where you show off, saying that, sir, it's not me who's telling you this, but there are 2,500 other farmers who are telling you that it makes sense, that this business makes sense. You understand? Now you are able to relate to the other person, saying that, oh, this guy is really onto something. So that's what the traction slide is basically, either number of customers or either number of products that you have sold. It can be in thousands of kgs, it can be in units, whatever unit you are trying to do. For Komala and Kushal, probably it will be like saying that there are 75 colleges which have already subscribed to us. So now what's happening as an investor for me, my homework, whether this product runs or not runs, has already been done by 75 other people. I don't have to do the homework. Right? Prajwal says, what if we don't have customers or only sold a few products? So then this slide may be not relevant for you, Prajwal. You can probably ignore the slide. Or you can say that we have tested this with so many people, and now if you give me money, I will go and get more customers. See, a lot of startups, they have proved their product, but they don't have money to go to the market. So go to market is also a very key aspect for raising money, which is what you can tell, Prajwal, to your customers, that we have only sold it to a few people. But if I had money, I would probably go to 10,000 people, and here how I am going to go. So for Prajwal, instead of traction, this slide will become a go-to-market slide, saying that I only have a prototype, I only have 10 customers, but I get money and I will move forward. Got it, Prajwal? And Prajwal has said that he's not bunking, he's in the class. Thank you so much, Prajwal. Right? Next slide is the Kemcho, which is Gujaratis for hi, how are you, which is nothing but your go-to-market slide. What is a go-to-market slide? It is basically telling the investor that you have thought through, saying that I have a product, but how will I make my customers get the product? Please understand, go-to-market does not mean I will do digital marketing. I will put advertisements in the newspaper. I will, buy advertisement time on the TV and put an ad. No, that's not go-to-market. Go-to-market is more of a strat. Those are all tactical things that you need to go to the market. Go-to-market is a strategy by which your end customers or the people who will take decisions will come to know about what you are trying to do. For example, for Kushal and Komala, because they're in the college segment, their go-to-market strategy could be doing, let's say, employment fairs across the country, right? So what do you do? What happens when an employment fair happens? Then the colleges will automatically come to them. They will all come to the same place. They don't have to go to 10 colleges. 100 colleges will come to them, because for the college, there's a dire need for them to get employment for their students, right? So automatically the college is trying to come to them. And that is what is the go-to-market strategy of Komala and Kushal, rather than saying that I will put 100 ads in Times of India saying that we are a company that will give your students employability skills, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. No one will come. But do one employment fair, and 100 colleges will come. Now, when they're they are in a captive audience, you talk to them about what you do and what you can help them to become a better college or whatever kind of thing. Number 9 slide, or the key component of an investment pitch deck is why you. This is where you harness upon why is it great, problem is there, there's a solution, you found the solution, but why should I put my money on you? And this is one of the most key slides, because later on I will tell you that investors predominantly invest in you as the founder and not in the business or the idea alone. It's like the metaphor that Dr. Lopez gave of the jockey and the horse. Okay, if I have a good jockey, I can get him 10 horses and he will win the race. If I have all my money on the horse and the horse becomes old or it dies or it gets an injury, I'm stuck. My business won't move it. So that's how investors are also, that if I have a good startup founder team, then I can always pivot. Then they can always pivot and my money can be much safer, rather than if the business becomes irrelevant because of something changing. Like, let's say, for example, someone who started an event management business in January would have failed because by March, events were closed. Now they can't pivot. What can the team do, right? So that's That's what the investors are trying to find out as to why are you the right people as the team. So here, a lot of people that I see, a lot of startups, you put a photograph of yourself and your name and your company and your designation and what you have studied. No, that's not what the investor is trying to do. Okay, that's for bharatmatrimony.com. For the investor in matrimony.com, what you really need to do is, what is it that Ramesh is doing? What is it? Let's say Ramesh, Abhishek, and Ramya and Hemanta are in the same company. What strengths that Hemanta brings? What strengths that Ramesh brings? What strength that Ramya brings? What strengths that Abhishek brings? Okay, one of the key things that I have learned in my own life, having looked at a lot of startups and read about a lot of them, is startups with 2 or more founders are much more successful than startups where there's one single founder. Reason is because you may be strong in one aspect, you may not be strong in another. For example, in my case, I can't comprehend numbers even today. I don't understand money and finance, right? And when I started my career initially as an entrepreneur, I failed 3 times in my startup ventures. I failed because I did not have a partner who understood money and finance. My other partners were also people who were from a sales and marketing background. So we were all bringing the same skills onto the table. The 4th time when I became successful was because I brought in an external director into my company whose only job was to talk about money and nothing else. If those of you who are aware of the 6 thinking hats of Edward de Bono, you will understand that there are 6 different hats that you have to wear. As an entrepreneur, we can wear those hats, but we should not wear them because your strengths are in a particular thing. If you're a tech, again, I like the example of the series Silicon Valley. Watch it on Hotstar, I think it is on. It's an old series. How the whole team is made of technocrats, but they don't have the marketing skills. They bring in an external guy. It flops in that particular context. But for you, you need to find each of your founders, what is the strength that you're bringing in, articulated to the investor. Okay. The key part of this also is, if let's say Dr. Somana articulates that he's great in technology, but he's probably still weak on finance or weak on marketing, then the investor might come and say that, boss, I will give you money, but I will also come on board and help you with my networking skills and building my network. I have a classic example in my city, Coimbatore. A company called Ampere, which was one of the first pioneers in electric vehicles in India. They sold out last year to Greaves Cotton for around 180 crores. Hema was very strong in technology. Hema was very strong on product, but Hema's channel was very minimal. Greaves Cotton, which is an 80-year-old company that manufactures diesel engines, has almost 1,800 distributors across India. So when they came on board, apart from the money, what they brought for Hema was the network of 1,800 dealers. Overnight, Hema's company had 1,800 branches. You realize that's where the team slide comes in important for the investor or the audience to understand what is missing and what is not missing in your business. Then you talk about the numbers. Again, very broad numbers, don't go into details. No one is bothered about. I saw some of your slides. There are numbers like 45 lakh 432.33. Right? I really, in those 10 minutes, I don't have the time to look at it. What I really want to do is, sir, hum log 4 lakh, we will sell each machine for 4 lakhs. In a year, we will sell 100 machines, which means for 400 lakhs, 4 crores. Selling a machine costs me around 20 lakhs. So my gross profit is going to be 20 lakh on each machine, equal to 2 crores on the thing. That's all. The big numbers are enough. Don't go into the details. It is not there for the first pitch presentation. It's like bringing the marriage metaphor. You're meeting the girl's parents for the first time. You don't tell them what your PF is. You don't tell them what your DA is. You don't tell them what your travel allowance is. You tell, sir, ladka kamata hai, he earns 1 lakh a month. That's all you tell, right? That's how it is here as well. Just tell the big numbers. Don't go into the minor nitty-gritties of the numbers. These are certain slides that may be relevant, that may be irrelevant for some of you. One is great. It's a great business that Ramya you're doing. But what stops from Komala and Kushal, who are also near you in your state in Mysore, copying this idea and doing this business because they saw you on a workshop and they have now copied your idea, right? So this is where you talk to people and say that, sir, yes, my idea can be copied, but I already have a 3-year lead before anyone else. So if they want to start, they will have to spend at least 2.5 years understanding this business and coming. And by then I would have settled my business. One. The other entry barrier can be for companies which have a technology. Your IP is your entry barrier. Please also understand that although an IP is looked at as an entry barrier, it doesn't stop anyone from getting an IP with a very small minor tweaking. So don't think that you are Superman and that no one else will copy you. Nothing. It doesn't happen. I know when I started Presentim as a presentation design agency, For the first 6 or 7 years, I was under the impression that I am the only company in India. Today, I know there are at least 142 companies in India which make presentations as their only business. There are close to 1,800 companies in the world which do the same business. So it's not Pradeep got a brilliant idea and Pradeep thinks he's the only person who's doing it. No. So please try to find out what are the different entry barriers. One could be the technology, one could be the team, one could be the lead time that you have with the market. One could also be, like, for example, Yogesh said, the traction itself is an entry barrier. By the time someone else starts the business, I will have sold to 10,000 people. There's enough business for me, there's enough money for me, right? And you also talk about the competition. Again, the worst things investors want to hear from you. Tell me, in competition, what do you think is the worst thing they want a startup to tell them? Which startups think is the best thing? Put it on chat.
Competition.
I don't have any competition. Yes. If just utter those words and the investor will throw you up. Trust me, all of us have competition. It could be direct competition or it could be indirect competition, but all of us have a competition. So please be clear what your competition is. If it's a direct competition, analyze based on the different benefits that you give to your customer vis-a-vis what your competition is giving. If there's an indirect competition, then tell them how your product or service is going to be better for the customer or the end user, right? But you have to think through this because you cannot go into the. I'm a salesman and I know how selling can be difficult. There was a time in my career in 95 when I used to sell table lamps as a college student. I used to knock on 400 houses every day selling table lamps. Though they used to have these Canadian table lamps where you knock on the top, the light will burn. You knock on the top, the light will go off. Like this is like the predecessor to your what is that Amazon girl? What is the Amazon character which
Alexa.
Alexa, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Alexa,
right? So the predecessor to Alexa in 1995 was this tapping. You tap and the light burns, and you tap, the light switches off. I used to, on an average, meet 400 people every day. And do you know how many table lamps I used to sell? 2. On my best days. There used to be days when I did not sell anything. Selling is not an easy game. My first customer of my first startup, I got them in the 18th month. Whereas when I started off, I made a projection saying that I will have 300 customers in the first month. Think of me in 18th month with not even having one customer, whereas I should have had 6,000 customers. It is a difficult thing to sell. It's not an easy thing to sell. Don't sit under the tree and make your numbers. Find the numbers after testing in the market and then talk to investors. Because the other thing that investors hate is giving them bullshit. They can see through it in a minute. They're all people who have been there, done that. They have burned their fingers. So God forbid some investor is from your own industry, then you are gone if you start giving bullshit. So give clear answers. If you don't know, just say don't know. If you have not done work into it, just say I have not done. Right? Those are certain attributes that investors are looking at, which again I will talk to you in a few minutes. And finally, the Allah ke naam pe de de Baba moment, where you put your hands forward and say, give me money, right? So the ask. Now again, you have to be very clear what you are asking for and why you are asking for. Very, very, very important. Again, I have seen startups who come with random numbers. Yesterday, there was a consultant who was telling me that they need to raise 5,000 crores. And me and my strategy partner asked him, and this guy is like with almost 25 years experience, okay? We're asking him, why you need this 5,000 crores? We need 5,000 crores, we just did some calculations. Please show us the calculations. And he's showing like one 4-line calculation. Market size so-and-so, market will buy so-and-so, multiply by my selling cost, and this is my ask. Please don't do that. Go into the detail. Find out whether you really need that money. It does not necessary that you go to the investor with a big number. It is not necessary that you go with a smaller number. But do your calculations right. More than the ask, you have to be clear why you want to use that money. What are you going to do with the money? Let's say I'm asking for 10 crores. If I give you 10 crores, what will you do with the 10 crores? I want to know very clearly, are you going to use it for go-to-market strategy? Are you going to use for product development? Are you going to build a team? Have the corresponding numbers on hand. Don't put them on the slide. Have them in hand. If the conversation goes to the next stage, you have to use that. But this is kind of the most important slide where the investor understands that you have thought through your entire business and they're able to set the context for what you're trying to do with their money. Also understand most investors will not invest in a startup that is asking for working capital. Let's say you are asking money for salaries for people. They may not be really interested in it because that's not That's a tactical thing. They're looking at money raising for strategical aspects of your business. It could be getting an IP. It could be increasing your channel bandwidth, putting up branches everywhere. It could be buying technology. It could be a manufacturing unit. Those are the bigger things on which they're looking to fund the money for. So these are the 12 things that I would say should be there in a maximum of 14 to 15 slides. Some slides can be layered for you to easily expand them, but more than that is not needed for that 10-minute or 7-minute presentation that you have with the investor. Certain things that you can have in your appendix is the exit strategy. Again, why exit? It's not you exiting the business, but you giving an exit to the investor, which is basically how he or she is going to make money. Saying that, okay, after 3 years, we will buy back all your shares at a particular cost. Or after 5 years, we will go for an IPO and you can encash your shares or whatever. For some of you who are just starting off, this may not be a relevant thing. So don't put an exit strategy at all. Just tell them that we would like to discuss it with you once we sit across the table. It's like again, the marriage metaphor, don't talk about divorce in the first meeting, right? So you don't talk about divorce. You don't say that after 5 years, we will see if the marriage works out, otherwise both of us will go our ways. But some of you who are in a mature business and are clear about your funding requirements, you can put an exit strategy. It can be an appendix. It can be in the main slides as well. Articulate partnerships which are important for your business to grow. What are the different kinds of companies with which you need to build a partnership? What are the companies? Let's say, for example, you have an idea, you have a prototype, but you don't want to be the manufacturer. So you need a manufacturing partner. So those are the different partnerships that you need. Articulate them in a slide, but keep that in the appendix. Those of you who are in a business where there's a running model, working model. Let's say, for example, like Yogesh was talking about, right? Then I would say, show them a demo. There's nothing like showing them the real thing. And if the demo is working and you, like Yogesh has 2,500 customers, I would say that would be the first thing that you put it in front of, in the first slide, not even the appendix. The working model is the best seller for you to sell to the investor or to the customer, that what you are talking makes sense. So demo could be an appendix part. Some of the other things that you can carry along as a printout would be an executive summary, which is like a 2-pager. Let's say the investor says that my partners are not here. I would like them to understand what you do. So it's a wordy 2-pager, which you share with them saying that these are the executive summary of my entire business. Some of the financial models, which is like best case scenario, bad case scenario, worst case scenario, really great case scenario, which is basically the balance sheet kind of a thing, which is more detailed, where you can go into the detailed numbers, saying that this is on the basis of this is what I gave you the macro number, saying that this is the business turnover or operation numbers that we have. And any other document that can validate your numbers on the slides. Could be market research data. The data could be primary data. The data could be secondary data that you have purchased. Those are all things not needed on the slide. Like I said, now these are all like the my chacha and my chachi and my uncle and my auntie. You don't talk about them in the first meeting with the girl or the boy, right? You talk about them in the second or the third meeting. Similarly, here just carry them as printouts. If they ask for it, give it to them, but don't put them on the slide. More than enough if you have the 12 things that we spoke about. Let me just run through them. 1, which is the value proposition. What is the great thing that your startup is doing? 2, the problem, or what is it that you're trying to make the world a better place by? 3, how many people have this problem, which is nothing but the market numbers or the market size? 4, the eureka moment, which is the great solution that you have. 5, how it works, your product, your solution, again in a very small way. 6, where does the money come from? 7, do you have some traction already? If you don't have traction, remove the slide. The go-to-market strategy, how are you going to get customers? Why is it that I need to invest as an investor in you, the team? The numbers or the operational plan for the next 2 years or 3 years. Earlier, till 2 years ago, investors were asking for 5-year plans, but now people have realized that the 3-year plan or 5-year plan of March 2020 was useless in April 2020, right? We didn't think that black swan events like COVID might happen. Again, if you are someone who's good at who likes to read, there is this book by Tayeb called Black Swan, which predicts how the stock markets will work with random events that no one predicts. Investors are today aware that a plan for 2 years or 3 years is more than enough. Beyond that, no one can predict what will happen in the market. So just come with 2 or 3 year plans. Talk about entry barriers. Talk about the competition. Then come to the clearly articulate. I need 5.5 crores, and I need this 5.5 crores because 2 crores will go to technology, 1 crore will go into buying equipment, 1.5 crores will be buying onboarding senior talent into the company because I am a technocrat. I don't have marketing experience, sales experience. I'm going to get experts from those domains on board. I need that money for them. And then in the appendix, you have the exit strategy. You have the partnerships that are required to make your business great. You have a demo of your product. You carry along as printouts, not as slides, the executive summary, a 2-page summary of your entire business, financial models, how you have worked it out, and market research. On the financial models, my advice is please don't go to an auditor. Auditors are number crunchers. Go to a financial person, someone who understands financial management, and get them to crunch your numbers and not the audit. Auditors will only take, auditors are like doctors who do, postmortem, right? They take numbers and they use numbers. So the auditors are not the right people. What you need is a financial CFO kind of a person to crunch. There are enough shared CFOs in the market. Don't bother if you don't have a CFO in your team. There are enough shared CFOs who have very good experience. Like how Presentum gives that value, there are people who will become your CFO for a part-time 2 hours a week or 2 hours a month kind of a thing for a fee. Use them when you go to investors. Finally, when you pitch it with passion or not at all. The most important thing, like I said, your numbers can be great, your business can be great, your product can be the great, but if there's no passion in the way you pitch it to the investor, trust me, they may have 100 second thoughts before they want to call you for the next conversation, right? It is 7:51. We are coming to the last 45 minutes of the session. I'll give you a 5-minute break at 7:51, 1 o'clock. Switch off your camera, take a 5-minute break, walk away, go drink water, have a cup of tea, get some dinner, go to the loo, whatever you want to do. Let me stop sharing and I'll put on music. When the music stops, we will start off again. Here we go. Take a 5-minute break. We will be back at 7:56.
This is the rhythm of the night. Oh yeah. This is the rhythm of the night. Oh yeah. The rhythm of the night. This is the rhythm of the
Yeah. Anyone has any questions that you would like to ask for whatever we've spoken so far? Anything that you think you don't agree with, or that you think you agree with, or you would like no more? Nothing. Yeah, Vijaya.
Yeah. For the elevator pitch or the first slide, whatever we discussed,
Right.
I gave my own context that we are doing bioreactors, and so for the bioproduction.
Right.
So bioreactors are generally a machine that can be employed to manufacture vaccines, to enzymes, and even to the processed meat.
Right.
So should I elaborate it that way for the value proposition, or should I make it more?
Look at it from a very dumb person point of view is what I would say, Vijaya. Like, for example, you're talking about vaccine right now. So especially because the current scenario is a market where anything to do with COVID vaccines is like big money, is what people think. So try to articulate it in such a way that it's dumbed down, if that's the right word, in a very simple English that any person can understand.
Sure.
You get the point. So because, like I said, although my electronic specialization was medical electronics, but when I read bioreactor and bioproduction, I thought it was to do something more with agriculture, right? I didn't even think about vaccines. So see if you can articulate it with a use case, helping companies manufacture vaccines at 1/10 the cost. Could be. I'm just giving an example, okay? And So then now what happens is that the other person understands that, okay, the best use case scenario is vaccines, and what is the value proposition? You are reducing time for them.
Yes.
Correct. I think the typical problem comes from you and me. We all are so in depth in our domain that we think everyone else understands what we're talking.
Yeah.
The fourth concept, the empathy part, is where we all forget that the other person may not know exactly the words that we are using. You're from Tamil Nadu, right, Vijay?
Yes, sir. I'm from Chennai. I'm actually right now in Hyderabad. I've come for an exhibition.
That's okay. Just to give you an example, Seamarna enna theriyuma ungalku?
Seambala.
Seamar.
No, I don't know.
Okay. So the funny thing is, Vijaya and I are from the same state, and I use a Tamil word which my friend from Chennai doesn't understand. Seamar in Western Tamil Nadu means broom. Sivakatta. Thodapukatta solvingla.
Yes.
Right. So you understand. You have to bring in that. Sometimes we think that the other person understands the words that we are using, and they absolutely have no clue what we are trying to see. So how would you know this when you're doing investor pitches? Like today, when I'm looking at screens and seeing Hemanta and Abhishek and Kushal and Ramesh on the video, I'm able to see the visual cues that I'm getting from them. If they're kind of blank, then I think that, okay, probably they're not understanding what I'm trying to say. And trust me, I've had so many experiences where the simplest things that you think people will know, they do not know. So it's always better to err on the side of caution and make it as dumb as possible. Then let them ask, say, okay, boss, I know all this. Tell me something more detailed, kind of a thing, right?
Yes.
Cool. Anything else? Perfect. Okay. So let me go into the second part. So this part is basically what is it that investors are really looking at when you go to them for a pitch. Okay. And the next 6 slides may be very surprising to you because none of the slides talk about business model, none of the slides talk about money, none of the slides talk about return on investment, none of the slides talk about scalability, but they're all very human-based. What is the right word? Attributes that investors are looking at. Okay, and this proves more than enough that it's not really the business or the product that really matters. What really matters is you as the entrepreneur or as the startup. So number one that investors are looking at when they are putting their money in is character. And here is where the real analogy of the marriage or getting the bride and groom, right? At least in today's context, the first thing that mother or father will say, लड़के के पास पैसा है नहीं है चलेगा अच्छा लड़का होना चाहिए, right? पையன் நல்லா the boy or the girl should be good. We don't care whether he's getting a big salary or small salary. Why? Because you know that those are things that will always come. Business will always come. Growth will always come. Customers will always come. But certain things that are inherent in your as a human quality I cannot as an investor bring it to you. So are you someone who tells lies? Are you someone who does not have integrity? You are ready to give bribes to people? Are you someone who's not dependable? Are you someone who's afraid that, okay, you tell the investor that, sir, we will try for 2 years, sir. If nothing works out, I'll go back to working at Infosys, sir. Right? Now, as an investor, I'm scared. Boss, what is this? If your husband and wife fight for one day, this guy says he will give divorce. Right? So that's what investors are looking at as the biggest thing. How strong is your character? And they're judging this from various aspects of what you're talking to them. So be very careful as to the words that you utter. Don't show them anything that will say that you are not someone who believes in integrity. You're not someone who can be relied. You're not authentic. You are ready to compromise on certain things. Don't ever give any of those feelings to the investor. Number two that investors are looking at is the confidence that you have, one, in your product or your business. The moment they start asking you two questions, I said, oh, sir, I think not a good feeling, right? There are other kinds of entrepreneurs who are dead, saying that, boss, I am right, you're totally wrong. Absolutely no, sir. Whatever you're saying is wrong, sir. I am the person who has sat in the lab. I know what I'm talking about. These are two different characters that investors don't like. One who has overconfidence and one who has underconfidence. So bring in your confidence the right way, saying that, sir, we have done this. We have seen the market for 2 years. We know you're saying it is going to be a difficult market. Give us some time and money. We will come back with solid numbers to prove what you're saying. And then you invest in us. Like I think one of the speakers today said, you can go to the investor and say, I don't want your money now. I don't want it now. Today, in fact, one of my customers from Coimbatore, she called me up and said, Pradeep, let's make the investor deck. But one of the slides, let it be saying that we will not take your money till COVID goes off entirely and the market comes to a stable thing. So I don't want money now. But I'm starting my work now so that I want you to as an investor on the top. So that's very important. Is there someone waiting in the waiting room? No, right? Aryan, are you on the call? You just check if someone's waiting on the waiting call or whatever. Cool. So that's number two. Number three aspect that investors are looking at, very, very important aspect, is that are you as an entrepreneur or a startup someone who is coachable? I'm sure all of you have heard of the story of housing.com. Team Yain, I need to mute you. Yeah. So housing.com was one of the biggest IIT ventures in India. I don't remember. I think his name was Abhishek Yadav, some Yadav, right? IIT Mumbai boy whose idea was to aggregate housing loans. That's all. And the biggest benefit for them was that they had the domain housing.com. After some point of time, the investors realized that this guy doesn't listen to anything that they say because he's a young guy. He's adamant with his ideas. Maybe he was right, maybe he was wrong. I don't know, right? I'm no one to judge it. But beyond a point of time, investors realized that this guy is not going to do the right thing, what is for the business. And they actually threw him out of his own company. Steve Jobs is an example. He was thrown out of his own company because his ideas were not coherent to what the company was trying to do on a larger scale. So investors are looking at someone who's ready to accept a different point of view and is ready to be coached. Because the investor is coming there with 30, 40 years of experience of having done different businesses. Maybe he doesn't understand what Dr. Somana is doing directly, but he or she has some inherent business experience which can be used. So you have to be someone who is coachable. Also someone who has urgency. Entrepreneurs cannot be people who are lazy, who say that, okay, we will do these things later on. We will do it slowly. We will take things one time at a day. I want to take a Saturday off, Sunday off. Sir, Diwali time, sir. I want to go back to my native place and enjoy vacation. I'll forget the deck that I have to make for my customers for the next 4 days. That doesn't work. As entrepreneurs, we are expected to be 24/7 workers, and investors also expect, because it's their money and they want returns faster. So if you don't show a sense of urgency, then maybe they are a little wary, because they know that money may come, but they don't want money coming after 7 years. No one has that patience now. They want their money, their returns as fast as possible. Investors are also looking at entrepreneurs who have passion. Like I said, if you are a jockey who knows how to make the horse run, this horse may fail, but I'm sure you will run another horse and I will bring you another horse. I'm okay with that. So show as much passion about your business. Let it show in your body language. Let it show in your tone. Let it show in the ideas that you're trying to do. Let it show in the urgency that you're showing to take this company from a 2 crore turnover to a 200 crore. They don't want someone who wants to take it from a 2 crore to 2.5 crore in 5 years. No, they want someone who can take it from a 10,000 customer company in 5 years. Please understand one thing, but this is not applicable for everyone. Okay, If you are looking at funding and if you're looking at investors, then you can be. For example, my business, I know today I have 300 customers. Next year, maybe I can have 340 customers or 350 customers. That's all. In a month, I can get 5 customers. And I am happy with that. But if I go to an investor, I cannot go with his numbers. Please understand. That's what I want you to understand. You have to find whether you are a scalable business and you want to make big money, or you're a small businessman and you want to continue that way, organically growing. It's perfectly fine both ways. You have to find what it is. The organically growing companies are not something that investors are really gung-ho on. So that's what you need to really understand. Finally, the bottom line from all this is that remember, the investors are not investing in the product or the solution or the business. They are investing in you. So you have to be very articulated to tell them that you are the right fit for them. Like how we say, right? You're marrying the girl or the boy. You're not marrying his company or his business or his whatever, right? Those are all immaterial things. What really matters is that you and she or he and she, you are going to be couples for life, and you have to stay together. So they're trying to see whether you're the right fit to work along with them. You may have a brilliant idea, but if they get the feeling that you're not the right fit, they may not invest in you. Please understand. That's why many startups come back saying, "Yaar, itna acha dhanda hai, paisa kyun nahi de raha?" Because they don't believe in you. They don't see the passion in you that you will take this company to the next height. You are someone who's saying that if nothing works out, I'll go back to being an employed person. So those are small cues. Like I said, these are all very behavioral cues. So be very careful when you throw these cues to the investors, and be sure that you give them all positive things to look at you as a startup. So this is, like I said, this is Gyan part, the 10 minutes that I spoke now. Again, these are all some things that no one will ever tell you. But these I have got inputs from having spoken to 45 different investors on a one-on-one interview kind of a mode, asking them what is it that they really look at. Because they get 100 customer companies which come saying that I will make your 5 crore, 500 crores. But they don't invest in all the 100. They probably invest in 1 or 2. The reason they don't invest in the remaining 98, although it will make them money, is because they want their money to be safe. They want to take risk, but not a risk that is like a blind kind of a risk. And for that risk, they are looking at all these 6 or 7 different characteristics or attributes in the startup founder or the startup. Cool. Now, the next 10 minutes, I will talk to you something from a very tactical point of view, which is to make you a designer, as a CEO who understands a little bit of design that can be implemented for your startup. Hi, Komala. Took your lunch break, dinner break, and came back. No, I saw that you're not there on the call. Sir, mark 10 minutes attendance absent for Komala in the call. Cool. So now we will talk about design for non-designers. 1 minute, I will talk to you about the presentation development part, which is basically what we do in our business. And I think this is a structure that you should follow to really make awesome presentations. Whether you're making it for investors or for your customers, this process will help you. Part 1 is brainstorming. What is brainstorming is not Komala and Kushal as co-founders sitting together and coming up with ideas, but Komala and Kushal asking Abhishek, Ramya, Hemanta, Radha, Ramesh, Somana, or Yogesh to sit with them and come up with ideas. Because then what happens is you are bringing in the empathy part, that some things that you thought you understand and everyone understands, maybe Abhishek will come up with a stupid question that you never thought would come up. So this way you bring in those 6 thinking hats aspect. Again, for this part, if you want some input material, go and buy the 6 Thinking Hats by Edward De Bono. It's a wonderful book which teaches you how you can, as a team, think of different ideas. The second part that you do after, like I said, this is all very tactical. These are day-to-day things that I do in my team, and I know it works. Many of you may not be doing it, and so although it may sound childish to you, please try to see if you can implement this. Sketch those ideas on a piece of paper or a tissue paper or whatever. My computer says participants can now see your screen. Till now, were you seeing the screen or no, Komala? You were seeing, right? Okay. No, the 10 minutes you didn't see, apart from the 10 minutes. So Kushal, I'll ask. You were able to see the screen, right? I don't know why randomly I got a message that participants can now see your screen. I don't know what's up.
Yeah, we were able to.
Cool. So sketching ideas is basically giving a visual form. It need not necessarily be a drawing, just a rough sketch. But what happens is when you sketch ideas, like I can see behind Komala on those yellow post-it notes, your ideas become more powerful and they come out in a much more fluid way. It's a very proven method that more than, like for example, if I say Hemanta, can you unmute yourself, Hemanta?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, dog. Okay, no, I didn't abuse you. Okay, what came to your mind first? Was the word DOG that came to your mind, or was it some kind of a actual dog that you know in your life that came to your mind?
It's an actual dog which I know in my life.
Some dog, right? The word DOG did not come to any of our minds, which is basically a proof that we are all visual thinkers. We can only see images and pictures. Words don't matter to us at all. They are just an abstract way of defining things. And when you do business presentations, when you start sketching them, your ideas will become more coherent if you sketch them as rough sketches. It can be anything. You don't have to be an artist. Just roughly sketch them. Then what you do, you group ideas together to bring things that relate to one another together, things that are not related to one another, put them separately. This is where Post-its really work well. But in the Indian context, I have seen many of us have Post-its. We don't use the Post-its. We have it in our table. We don't want to use it because it will get wasted, right? Put your hands up if how many of you relate to this. I have like 50 Post-its on my table, but I rarely use them because I think, "Arey yaar, use ke to waste ho jayega," kind of, right? So, but anyway, Post-its are a good medium because you can move them around. In slides, when I make PowerPoints, I use a slide sorter view because I can move around things. So that then you bring in things that relate to one another together, things that are unrelated separately. Then what you do, you storyboard, saying that, okay, now I'll talk about A, I will talk about B, I will talk about C or D. Again, go for a paper-based model like this, put the drawings on a sheet, move the slides around physically, then it will give you the flow. Yesterday or day before yesterday, I think I was watching a series. I think Nancy Duarte. Okay, Nancy Duarte is supposed to be the mother of presentation designers in the world. She runs a company called Duarte.com. Those of you who have seen the movie An Inconvenient Truth of Al Gore, she was the one who designed that movie. It was given an Oscar award for best presentation kind of a thing. And what she said is that before my first TED talk, I practiced 22 different times. Right? That's what storyboarding will help, by moving things around, because every time you do it, you will find that this flow is not coming in and you will move things around. If you do it on the computer straight away, maybe you will not get that benefit. And then what you do this, which is cut, edit, delete, throw, dump, whatever kind of a thing. For example, this slides that you're seeing, I have around 86 slides today. When I started off with these slides, I had 196 slides. And then I say, okay, was in this 2 hours, maybe I may not be able to talk about this. These two are already redundant. They look the same. So let me knock it off. Delete, 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 delete. This is the worst thing that most entrepreneurs are not able to do. Most presenters are not able to do. They think I made this slide and okay, let it be. Somehow I'll fit in time. And you realize that by the time you're on 4th slide, the time is over and the investor is saying, boss, time up, enough, tata, bye, right? So very important that you don't emotionally connect yourself to the slides and delete them till you have something really crisp. If you have a 10-minute presentation, prepare only for 8 minutes. Like what happened today, current will go, power will go, net will go, everything that has to go wrong, Murphy's law, will go wrong. So always keep at least 20% time as a buffer time and prepare only for the remaining time. So if you think you have only 8 minutes, the rule of thumb is probably 1 slide for 30 seconds, maximum 16 slides. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Now we come into the design aspect, which is, like I said, certain things that you as non-designers need to know. 7 principles that I have distilled down from my own experiences in career. Number 1, something called as signal to noise ratio. Okay, maybe Kushal and Komala, you have already been through this, so you maybe understand this. But even otherwise, it's okay. Agalya, can you unmute yourself, Agalya, please? Agalya, not here, I think. Okay. Let's say Ramesh from IIM Trichy, right, Ramesh?
No, currently doing sir.
Hello, sir.
Agalya, you're there, right?
Yeah,
so Agalya, did you watch the latest? No problem, guy. Did you watch the latest Rajnikant movie?
No,
You didn't watch. Okay, what was the latest movie that you watched?
I think Bahubali 2.
Oh man. Okay, you are worse than me in movie watching. Anyway, so can you tell?
I have registered my concern in 2017 and I was doing my master's in Anna University, CEG main campus. I was going to class and I had my company inside university.
So you're that first bencher girl who attends all the lectures and get us all of us beaten up by the professor because we are bunking. Okay, good. So Ramya, have you seen Bahubali?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. So Agalya, please tell the story of Bahubali to Ramya, and the rest of us, we have to be like a fish market and make as much noise as possible. Okay, go ahead, Agalya. You can make whatever noise. Come on, Komal, unmute yourself.
Hello,
Who said?
Ramya. How are you?
Blah, black sheep, have
Hi,
you
can
any
you hear
wool? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bagubali 1.
Do that.
What
Okay, stop. Okay, stop. Okay, Agalya, now we will not make any noise. Who was that doing whoosh sound? Okay, nice sound effect, huh? Okay. Now please tell the story to Ramya. We will not make any noise. Yeah.
Ramya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
actually, I saw Bahubali 2, which is a continuation of Bahubali 1. The actual theme of that part 2 movie is
Okay.
why
Stop.
Kattappa
Thank you so much.
killed
Okay, Agalya, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right? So, from a very engineering perspective, can I say that Agalya was trying to give a signal to Ramya, which is the story, that the signal is the story that she was telling to Ramya. Do you agree? In the first case, Ramya was not able to get the signal. Why?
Disturbance in the signal.
Because there was noise, right? So there was
Background
signal
noise.
being transmitted, but there was noise which was stopping the signal from reaching Ramya, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, in slides, there's something called as visual noise. Every slide is a signal to the audience. Let's say, for example, I show a slide that says clap. So Komala has to understand that she has to clap, and that's the signal I'm trying to give. But everything else that stops Komala from understanding from that slide that she has to clap is noise or visual noise. What does it mean in real slide terms? I'll show it to you. So each of your slide is a message or a signal to the investor. Everything that stops the investor from understanding what you're saying is a noise. For example, in this slide, the speaker wants to say that there is one country which has lesser internet connection than the other country, and it has more internet connection than 4 other countries, right? Okay, this is the signal, that's all. Lesser than 1, more than 4, okay? Now tell me, to communicate this, do I need these lines that are here?
No.
No, right? Do I need this logo here? Please remember, the signal is lesser than, more than. That's all. Nothing else I want to communicate. Is this logo needed? Not needed. Is the photograph of the earth needed?
No.
Not needed. Is the purple background needed? Are these numbers needed? Yes, Ramya. Are these numbers needed?
Yeah.
Remember, all I want to say more than, less than. That's all.
Oh, okay. Then not required.
Not required, right? So all these things which are not required for you to pass the signal to the audience is nothing but visual noise. All the things that are there on your slide which are not relevant to that single one idea that you're talking about in that slide, including your company logo. Okay? Trust me, your company logo also is a noise because it is not adding any value to the message. So how will I remove all the noise? I will do this. Right? Now people can clearly see less than, more than. Also, they don't have to correspond this purple with this purple, with this green, because what we have done is we have put it here. Otherwise, what's happening? The customer or the viewer is irritated. He has to search here. Okay, orange means France. Okay, France. Okay, pink means China. You got the point? A lot of us, when you do graphs, you do this. You do the legend in such a way that they have to go and search the legend, then come back, correlate. So don't use legends as a separate entity. Use it as part of the graph so that it is easier for people to correlate.
Understood.
But more importantly, remove everything that's not needed to communicate the one single message that you want to communicate from your slide.
Even the
Correct?
company logo.
Absolutely. Because Ramya, for the last 1.5 hours, was every 1 minute was I telling my name is Pradeep Yuvraj, I am from Presentem. Okay, now we will talk about 7 design principles. My name is Pradeep Yuvraj, I am from Presentem. Okay, now we will talk about attributes that investors are looking at. My name is Pradeep Yuvraj. Okay, now we will talk about why presentation matters. Did I do that?
Oh,
Right? Your logo is like that only, right? It's shouting every slide saying that I am Belly the farmer, I am Belly the farmer. When already you started off by Belly the farmer. So first slide, last slide, enough. Why? Because it's actually distracting the other person from the message. And what's happening? You're losing space also, where you could have given something that is more valuable for the investor. Because he knows at the start of the presentation that you're Ramya Bopanna from Belly the farmer. You don't have to hit it on his face every time. Okay. So that's why I said your logo is not needed everywhere. If you're sending it as a printout, even more not relevant because it's going to be one document. Sometimes it's okay to put it on and off in like between 4 or 5 slides. Let's say someone suddenly comes in, he or she doesn't know what you're doing, who you are. For them, maybe to understand, but maximum 2 or 3 times in a deck, not more than that, right? Again, the funny thing with visuals and graphics is we think it's great. For example, let's say in a factory of 100 people, they took blood pressure of everyone. Okay, and this was the graph that they brought and showed. Does it look great? The graph looks great. Yes, a very three-dimensional graph, like some hi-fi from NASA kind of graph. All of us, when we want to talk about anything fancy, we use the word NASA, right? Even if you have to tell that today you should not come out of the house, you have to say NASA has said that people in Coimbatore in this colony should not come out of the house, and then Pradeep will believe, right? So very fancy graph. But let's say Hemanta, you as the CEO of the company, I show this graph to you. What action will you take after you see this graph? You're on mute. Any of you want to trademark the phrase "you're on mute"? You can make a lot of money. Okay, that's the phrase of the century. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll ask them to do the redo of the.
You will ask them to redo the graph, right? Tell me honestly, 10 out of 9 times or 10 out of 10 times, how many times would you yourself have made this graph? Let's say, assume you had the data. What's the possibility?
Not really, sir.
Not really? Okay, done. The honest fact is at least 75% of us, 75% of the times we would make some graph like this because it looks fancy. Okay. This is where you remember I had said when we were talking about Daniel Pink and the last attribute, which was meaning, comes. Okay. So now as the CEO, Hemanta says that he can see no meaning in this graph and he wants people to redo the graph. Right? Why? Because it did not make any sense to him. He cannot take any action based on this graph. Okay. Now, if I show this graph, can Hemanta take some action?
Yes. This is better understanding.
As a CEO, what do you infer from this graph, Hemanta? Let's say.
I get better understanding in the graph.
What do you really understand? Tell me.
Those numbers.
You now understand, but let's say you have to take a decision based on this slide. What would you do? You are the CEO of this company. This is the blood pressure of 100 employees.
Okay. So I'll just check the majority thing, like 160 to 179 is the majority.
Majority, okay. So what alarm is it giving you?
So we have to keep the track like below that second.
So the ideal blood pressure is between 120 to 129. Anything beyond that is not good blood pressure. So what will you do as a CEO?
We'll definitely ask the employees.
Employees, right? So now what's happened is this graph that did not make any meaning to Hanumanta has started making meaning to him because now he's getting an alarm bell. Boss, 75% of my employees are suffering from high blood pressure. What does it tell him? Either there's something wrong going on in the company, that there's too much stress in the company, or his employees are not following health habits. Some of them may succumb to heart attack. If they die of heart attack, he will have to find a new employee, train that person, spend so much money. So as the CEO, Hanumanta gets meaning out of the slide saying that, boss, the alarm bells are ringing. I have to act. The point I'm trying to tell all of you is when you show data slides to investors or to audiences, the data slide should give them some action item that they can decipher out of it. Data by itself does not make any sense. Data is all about the meaning of the data. That is why I said, don't put your Excel sheet, just copy your Excel sheet and put it here. What is the meaning from that Excel sheet? Sir, after having met 2,000 people, I have now realized that the right price for my product is 142 rupees. That's all. You don't show the data of the 2,000 people and what price they paid for it. The investor doesn't have time there. Neither does he have the effort, energy to do that. Your job as the presenter is to bring the meaning of the data to the audience. Number 2, picture superiority, which is basically don't use irrelevant photos that don't go with what you're trying to talk. Just because it's there on your computer, you just take one photograph and put it because you wanted to make it meaning. Here where they want to say 72% of surgeons are men. So what the other person said, okay, let me put a photograph that relates to it. Now what's the problem with this photograph? Abhishek, if you go to a hospital for surgery, God forbid you should not. Okay, let's say you take some person whom you don't know to surgery, okay, and the doctor and the nurse are all standing like this smiling. Will you be comfortable admitting that person there? Right? No, you will not, because you know it's an artificial photograph. So the moment we see artificial photographs, the mind starts opposing it. Subconsciously, the mind knows that this is an artificial photograph. And in an Indian context, these are all Gora people and you really don't see them. So how do you do it? You bring in a high quality image. that is abstract at the same time. By seeing this, you don't know whether it's an Indian girl, whether it's a foreign girl, whether she's a doctor, whether she's a nurse. But what is most important in the slide? 28% surgeons are women. That's all that's most important. So bring in images that are relevant to what you're talking about. The second thing with images is the beauty of this slide is because the image bleeds the whole slide and is not like a small thing here. Many of you in your slides I have seen, there are 4 images in one single slide. Honestly, 4 images means 4 ideas and you're confusing me. I do not know whether I should see this, I should see this, I should see this. Give me 1 image and I can act. You give me 4 images, I cannot act, I will be confused. So use images, high quality images, and use them to bleed the full slide rather than trying to dump your slides with images. Number 3 is the importance of empty space. Okay, what is empty space? It's nothing but trying to give the mind something to subconsciously think on its own. What are you communicating? How it works? For example, in the slide, hara hachi boo is basically eat only up to your 80% full. Right? We have the slide, and this is what the customer sent us. Okay, now the customers said, sir, here there is space. Why don't we put our company logo? Like Ramya asked now, right? Why not put our company logo? There is space here, right? That's the tendency that all of us have, that wherever we see some empty space, we think we are obligated to fill that empty space with something. Either some people will end up putting a logo, someone will end up putting a plate of food or whatever. All of us have this tendency to do. But the best design is always design where there's a lot of empty space, because empty space forces your audience to imagine on its own. So how I would redo the slide? Let's say we redo this. But now what's happening is that more than the concept, the photograph is overpowering and it's taking too much of the space. Also, the empty space that's here and the empty space that's here is being divided into 2. Again, what's happening is you have empty space, but you're not leveraging it because it's now divided into 2. So a better way of doing the slide would be this. The beauty of this slide is not the text or the photograph, but all this empty space that's here. Because now what's happening is I am giving your mind the liberty to imagine on its own what is that empty space for. And your subject is coming out in a much more powerful way. So in your slides, if you think one simple photograph will do the work, just leave it at one photograph. Don't fill it just because there are. I have seen many of your slides. I've seen all your slides. I have seen some people have put 6-7 images because there was empty space there. That's all. There was no reason why they put the image. If there's no reason, delete the slide. Not needed. Number 4 is the importance of contrast. Again, some of you have used the same color background, the same color text. Like for example, what Paul Rand said is, without contrast, you are dead. Avoid the same color and same family as the foreground and the background. The most important thing that you need to do is people have to clearly get the message. Use contrast. How do you use contrast? By lighter background, darker foreground, or vice versa, and also with font sizes that you do. In my slides, all around, wherever there is red, your eye automatically got trained to say that, okay, wherever there's red, Pradeep means important point. Did I tell any of you that it's an important point? No, but your mind got trained, which is the next point that we talk about, is the concept of repetition. By trying to put one element which is common across all your slides, so that automatically you get trained. In my slides, in the last 85 slides, you have got trained saying that, boss, wherever Pradeep puts red, it means that's the key point of that slide. Everything else, you can stop seeing. How do you do that? By doing repetition. And then this principle number 6 and 7 are nothing but the principles of proximity and alignment, which again, a lot of us do, is because we want to fill in content in our slides. We do not differentiate between 2 similar and dissimilar things. So for example, here, you at one glance, you do not know what is the topic, you do not know what is the subtopic, you do not know who the speaker is, you do not know where it's coming from. Just random text put somewhere because someone had to put it. So how do I use alignment and proximity? I separate things that are from the same family. Things that are in the same family, I put them together. Not in the same family, I put them separately. So here, I change it by doing this. Topic, most importantly, prominent in a dark color in a bigger font. Subtopic in a smaller font. Speaker's name and company in a much smaller font, because I don't think that's important for this slide. What is really important is the first line. My audience can see that first line and they can come back to listening at me. So this is how you separate things together and bring them closer if needed, bring them separate if not needed. Again, in a lot of your slides, I have seen that you have just dumped content onto it without having separated them into components. for me as an audience, what happens is I don't know whether A and B are together, or A and C are together, or C and D are together, or A and B relate to each other, or they don't relate to each other. How do you do that? You visually do that by separating them together, right? In terms of the colors, using of colors. If it's a large venue, if it's a formal venue, use a dark background with a lighter text. If it's a small venue like on a Zoom call or one-to-one, you're sitting with each other, lighter background, darker text. Remember the 3-second rule. Your slide should be so clear that the person sitting and watching your slide should see it in 3 seconds and understand what you're saying, and not more than that. More than 3 seconds, anything on your slide, it means you have put too much information. And then what happens? Your slide becomes the hero and you become the side hero. Please understand, in the presentation, you are the hero or the heroine. The slide is just a side hero or sidekick. So don't put content which requires more than 3 seconds to be looked at on the slide. I know a lot of you will come back asking me, how do I tell technological stuff from there? You layer it into multiple slides and take the audience step by step for them to understand that. If you think you cannot tell it in 3 seconds, maybe you have not understood it well. If you think you cannot tell it in 3 seconds, that means it is not something that has to be put on a slide. It is something that has to be given as a printout. Like I said, your job there as a presenter is to summarize the meaning of those things so people understand that. Simple thing. This will take 3 minutes for anyone to even comprehend what is going on. This will take 1 minute, 30 seconds, 3 seconds for people to understand. Many people are having high blood pressure. Everything else is irrelevant, right? That's what I mean by this 3-second rule. In terms of fonts, try to stick to one font family or maximum 2 font families. Just because you like some Comic Sans kind of a font, don't use random 10 different fonts on your slide. Maximum 2 font families. These are called as serif fonts. What is a serif? Is nothing but these small legs that you see. Do you see that these legs? Your Times New Roman is a serif family. Serifs are good when you have small text. So if you look at in the newspaper, the subject or the content will always be in serif fonts. The headline will be in sans serif or without serif. There's no leg here, right? Ideally in a slide, use only sans serif fonts, as big font size as possible. Like I said, 3 seconds. The quick dog jumped over the lazy. That's all. So 5 words is the maximum that I try to keep on my slides when I design slides for my customers. 5 words. If you cannot compress your thought in 5 words and one good image, you have not understood it. Go back to the drawing board, think again, and come back. This is not a slide, it's a document. Please don't harass me by showing this to me as an investor on the slide. Give me a printout, I will go home and read at leisure. You go home and read at leisure. Like I said, use the maximum font size that gives the maximum eligibility. This is font size 40. This is font size 140. On my slides, I have a rule of thumb, nothing below font size 40. Because most investors will be in their 60s and 70s. They cannot read what is here and they will struggle. And when they struggle, they are abusing you, they are irritated with you, and your slide and your presentation is going to go for a toss. Use images that make real life human meaning and not abstract images like this. For example, someone wanted to do partnership. They used these kind of random images because they were lazy. They went to Google. Now my mind cannot understand these images and there's no human element to it. So what do? I use an image like this, which talks about partnership. What? A boat being rowed by 8 people. It gives me a non-abstract, a real human aspect to it, which says that partnership. So use images that make relevance to the audience from a human perspective. To summarize, make your slides as visual as possible. Your PowerPoint is not the important person here. You are the important person. If you have 10 ideas to say, use 10 slides, 1 idea per slide. And finally, remember, the world is going to be ruled in the conceptual age by people who are right brain thinkers, by people who tell stories. Start telling stories from each slide. Each of your slide has to tell a story. And finally, in terms of delivery, when you're delivering it to investors or to any audience, show passion, which is the P, show energy, because energy gets transformed. The moment you transform energy to audience, the audience is energetic. When they become energetic, they transfer energy to you and you get boosted, and it's a give and take kind of a thing, and there's more energy in the room. And show some action, both with your body language, both with your slides, both with movements, both with doing certain things that can bring people to do actions. To summarize the whole talk, The most important thing that you have to understand is that an investor is a human being. So whatever you talk, make it from the context of a human being and not from a machine. They are not Alexa, they are not Google, they don't understand everything. Think that they don't understand everything and then try to decipher how you can do it. Then what you do, you go ahead and do it, which is nothing but you make the pitch in front of an audience. The audience will give you 10 different questions, come back, repeat it. Then you will come back, make changes, then repeat it. As a rule of thumb, I have seen that my customers who have practiced their deck at least 10 times have had a 75% more possibility of getting the second call from the investor than those who have not practiced for more than 3 times. I keep asking them, how many times did you practice? What was the result? And based on these numbers, these are not cooked up numbers. These are numbers from the real customers that I have worked on who are all startups like you. The average has been that those who have practiced more than 10 times, when they practice, they come back with corrections. Then it becomes edit, cut, chop, delete. And they become so better. By the 10th time, the possibility of them being successful goes up by almost 45% or 50%. And they come back with a better hit ratio. Of course, what they're doing, what the product is, all that matters. But from a purely presentation point of view, that's what this whole thing is. I am 8 minutes past the time that was given to me. My coordinates are pradeep.yuvraj on Instagram, and that's my email ID and my website. I would be more than happy to help you out with anything that you need as a startup in the way forward for this competition.